What is up, gang? Welcome to episode 104 of Into the Necrosphere. Coming up, I will be talking to Christian Larson of Necrofier. Last week, I reviewed the new Necrofier record. This week, you will get to find out all about the making of Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, why Christian decided to start a black metal band at this stage in his career, and much more. Plus, I've got two reviews coming your way. Later on in the show, you will get to hear my candid thoughts on the new Ghost Bath and the new Doedsvangr records. And then if you stick around to the very end, if you're brave enough, I will be doing my usual super serious, highly scientific, critical analysis of the latest metal news headlines. If you would like your band featured on the show, reach out to me at intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. If I like what I hear, I will feature it on the podcast. If I don't like what I hear, I will pretend that I never received the email. You can also reach out to me on the socials. If you don't follow me yet, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and where else? Twitter. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the show, then make sure that you do that too, on whichever podcast platform of choice you choose to indulge in your podcasts in. And then finally, if you want to rep your colors on the streets, the best way to do so is go to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, and you can pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie or whatever else catches your fancy. And that way you can save yourself the hassle of a Into the Necrosphere face tattoo, which I believe is truly the most appropriate way to show your appreciation for what I do week in and week out. Next week, I am going to be talking to Dennis of Ghost Bath, hence the review this week. So that is going to be coming your way in 7 days' time. The only thing that could potentially throw a spanner in the works there is that the trip to Houston that you will hear Christian and I talk about has actually been pulled forward by a fair bit. So I'm recording this on a Sunday night, and as it is right now, in a week's time, I will be up in the air on my way to Houston. First flight that I have taken in, I think, about 2 years, 3 years maybe. So looking forward to that. It's obviously dependent on if they actually let me into the country or not, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, the plan right now is next week is Dennis of Ghost Bath, and I've got a few other folks in the pipeline as well. Like I said, that best of 2021 episode, I think I'm going to kick to the other side of 2021 and do something maybe in February when I come back, just so that I've got enough time to listen to some of the new stuff that's come out, because there is so much great music on the way at the moment. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I want the bands that I'm going to talk about at the very least to have received a fair shake from me before I put my list together. So enough chit-chat from me. Let us welcome now to the show for the first time ever, Christian Larson of Necrofier. I think probably the best place to start this conversation is to congratulate you on a fantastic debut. And what I've started noticing increasingly, I mean, Katie had mentioned this to me probably a couple of months back and said, when this comes out, she knows I'm really going to like it. Definitely need to check it out. I noticed as I'm starting to check out more reviews of the record that quite a lot of people are referring to it as the black metal debut of 2021. And I mean, there's a huge amount of positivity for the album. Are you surprised by that at all? How do you feel about how everything is being received at the moment?
I mean, I feel really good that everybody's liking the record. I mean, when we got done with it, I felt the artwork's really good. It felt really good about the songs, but when you release it into the wild,
yeah,
you don't know what comes back. But also, we're from America, so I didn't really know, say, how parts of Europe or how it would react to it.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were going out on a limb a little bit musically? If you think about, where you had come from. So, for folks that don't know, obviously you were part of Venom's Maximus for a period of time, which is very different to anything that you've done with Necrofier. And you've not really kind of gone full bore into black metal the way that you've done here. Was that a risk? And I guess the other question that I have is, a lot of times, guys tend to they tend to start out grim, and then eventually they outgrow it, and then they things get quieter and smoother, and then they release the last Death Heaven records. So, and then they say that if you don't understand it, it's just because it's gone over your head. It's just a bit complicated for you.
oh yeah, I don't like it when you can't tell people how they're supposed to feel about what you're playing. But I mean, Venomous, like we touched on a lot of like say subject matter, and kind of we're in like I would say in the same world of like where we were going, but not musically. So I mean, I don't know if a stretch would be the word, but I mean, it was something new, and I'm really glad the way it worked out, because I was kind of like, I want to do this, and then when Dauber was on board, like Dauber's like, let's do this band. It was kind of like, cool. All right, so here's some riffs. Sorry, who's gonna sing? Or like, I'm gonna sing. And he's like, can you sing like this? You know, it was just like, we're gonna do this, and I don't know. It was almost like I had to do it, or I can't really describe it. It was supposed like the feeling of it was. But
I was
really
just about
wanted
to say, what was that kind of tipping point for you where you decided, okay, you know, this is what I want to do now?
Well, Venomous ended, and I was me and Dauber had already talked about doing this. I was like, okay, well, I don't have anything else to do now, so let's go. So, you know, that was with nothing else to work on. I was like, you know, I concentrated all my effort on guitar and singing and just everything, but whole new world, you know, opened of like, okay, let's see what happens, try this out, do this, see how if I can make this work, things like that.
And those vocals, had that been something you had done before?
No, this is the first time. So it took me a lot of practice and trial and error, different things like that. Some tips from friends and things like that, you know, just kind of try this, don't do this, you know, don't do this because you'll just pass out red in the face, you know, different things.
I was just about to say, how did those first couple of rehearsals feel?
That was rough.
Yeah. I remember I was in a death metal band, well, like back in my 20s, like no, very early 20s. I was doing 2 radio shows, and normally we'd have band practice on a Thursday night, and then I'd have to record like a radio spot first thing on a Friday morning. And there were a couple of those mornings where I would come in and I just have to make up an excuse and say, "Oh, I've got a cold. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. My voice has just gone." You know, if there was anything askew with the monitor, as you know, so fucking easy to blow your voice out. You know, and then you get in there and you're trying to do an ad read, or you're trying to do something like that, and you know, every second word just disappears.
Yeah, you can just start trying to. Hey, okay.
The tips you got, out of curiosity, what were they?
Most of the things that really helped me were, say, like some breathing techniques, and also just like say this, like how much air you let out of when you're actually singing. Like not to start off, say something so where you just let everything go at once, and then you're breathless and can't breathe, and you're red in the face and things like that. Like not letting it all go at once, like a steady stream.
Yeah. And you've not yet taken it. Well, you've not been imparted the tip of drinking cat's blood before you go on stage, or before you begin to sing. Which, by the way, in South Africa, where I'm from originally, and I think I may have spoken to somebody about this at length on a previous podcast, was an actual urban legend that was going around. So they said, and it wasn't even about a black or a death metal band. They said that before Brian Johnson takes to the stage, he drinks cat's blood to make his voice sound as raspy as it does.
I feel like stuff like that was especially amazing in times probably pre-internet, where everybody didn't have an opinion on everything and would try to prove whatever.
But dude, so this is the thing, and I know when we spoke before we got started, I said we weren't going to talk about politics. This is more principle than anything else. So we're not going to go into deep into politics, but I do find a lot of what I see in, you know, on the so-called metal Twitter and these. Well, I don't even know if I would call them a fringe group, because I do think quite a lot of this thinking has permeated the metal scene. Katie and I spoke about it a lot when she was on the podcast, and we've spoken about it offline an awful lot as well. But this, almost kind of the stuff that we were fighting against and that we were railing against, this religious zealotry has just seemingly taken a different form now. And it's infiltrated everywhere. I mean, obviously, there's the whole thing that's going on with Chappelle right now, and but it seems to have infiltrated metal as well. And I I can't think of anything I find more disturbing, because, it's like when I got into metal was around the time of the PMRC, and, the PMRC was kind of my guide to finding great music. And, that's how I discovered Wasp and, all sorts of bands. But I never thought that this scene would get to a point where we're starting to self-censor, and where, bands are having their names put on lists. And it feels weird to me. Like I feel like either the scene is split and I'm in a lane all of my own, or I feel like, I'm scared to say this, I feel like I'm becoming old.
I probably half of it's old. But I feel like with the way modern culture is going, I feel like there's a witch hunt for everybody. Everybody wants everything to be fair or nice or whatever. And like on some of that, and like especially metal, it's not like what like say the topics are.
No.
Or just the kind of general vibe of it. So I mean, I don't know. Everybody wants to be outraged these days about something. So somehow they get mad at a bunch of bands about something they did 30 years ago, or some topic they sung about that's not, say, them actually promoting a topic, or the fact that you don't like religion now gets a different response than it used to, things like that.
I do feel, though, that if I unless someone draws a line in the sand, and enough voices make themselves heard, and we kind of we kind of stand our ground on the principle of free speech, or at the very least that sort of unspoken contract that we used to have, which is, if you don't like it, then don't listen to it. I feel like the first thing to go is going to be just about every death metal band that's ever sung a horror lyric, and then after that they'll start coming after everything else, because at some point you're going to be able to find, kind of to your point, something that offends just about everybody or anybody in within the fine print of whatever somebody has been singing about.
Well, especially, I mean, some of these people, like, say something you said in 1995 is not who you are now, but also because of the way things were said in 1995, like something you say then could be completely super offensive now, but in 95 it really wasn't thought of like that at all.
Yeah. Well, a part of my theory on that is, and I don't know how old you are, but I'm 41, turning 42 next year. But if you think about comedy in the night, in the 90s, like the apex of comedy in the 90s, or like peak 90s comedy, is South Park, in my opinion. There was always kind of like people were poking fun at each other. There was a lot of kind of back and forth banter, and that then 20 years later has become akin to assault with a deadly weapon. And I do feel like a lot of times the mismatch comes from this new generation who don't get that humor, versus the older generation who make those jokes because they still find it funny, because that's what they grew, Simpsons, Married with Children, Seinfeld, everything is what they grew up with. I mean, even Seinfeld, which is like, one of the most unoffensive things you can imagine. Google Seinfeld and then start looking at how many articles come up, blah blah blah. Here's 25 jokes on Seinfeld that's now problematic. 30 things they wish they didn't say. Whatever the case may be.
Yeah, if you're searching for stuff like that, you can find that all day. But yeah, some of it's what you said. Like the world's not the world that we grew up in, and when that's something you're used to, it's hard to look at things like you think it's like, oh, so this is how everything was, like, say you're talking about like us, say, because we're the same age with the Simpsons or something, or South Park or any of that stuff, but that's not how everything is now. So it's hard to look at the world different, even though you've seen it a certain way the entire time you've been alive.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs, though. Like I said, the whole sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me thing seems to have just gone out of the window now. And I do think, I watched the last Chappelle special. I thought it was brilliant. Um, I I feel like this is the last stand of free speech. If they manage to get him to apologize, I'm not sure, if you can get the most famous comedian in the world to apologize, I'm not really sure who else stands a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's just got to the point where no one's going to ever speak in public ever again.
Yeah.
Things like comedy's going to get bad. I mean, I don't even know where it goes.
Oh well, then you get to I've mentioned this before on the podcast also. The thing that terrified me most when I read it, and this must have been about 2 years ago, I think I read a Vulture or a Slate article that said, it's time to get used to living in a post-comedy world. Well, actually, today there was something more reprehensible. So there's some fucking rag called Deadspin that posted an article, Dave Chappelle is a pawn on a white chessboard. which I thought was fucking hysterical.
Amazing.
Yeah. Dude, just as a side note, by the way, I noticed you've got a pretty handsome vinyl collection in the background there. Is that the kind of the whole shebang, or is there a room where you
or things that probably need to be sorted at some point, but there's a bunch of it in here though.
Yeah, and just because I'm a nerd when it comes to this shit, what do you listen to that through?
I have an old 70s record player that, sometimes you have to push the knob like in a weird way to make it like some wire touch right, but it's one of those it looks like a piece of furniture, like it looks kind of like a buffet or end table, and then like it slides out.
Yeah.
Got some old tubes and stuff. It's a little rackety, but I like it a lot.
Yeah. No, I'm a big audio nut. I've spent way too much money on like my hi-fi and my stuff like that. But I was almost at the cusp of making the transition to vinyl, and I've been given a load of vinyls, as gifts over the years. But I've just never quite gotten there. What are your prized or what are the most prized records that you have in that collection?
Man, I don't even. There's so many. I mean, I started buying vinyl when I was a teenager because I was punk and vinyl was like $10, like cheaper. So the same record on CD was 16. So I'm like, yeah, well, we're just gonna buy a bunch of records. It's a little bit harder to listen to sometimes. I mean, especially now. I mean, it's I'll be at the house and I'll put on records in the other room and other things like that. But especially with digital things these days, it gets a little crazy. I mean, you can't take a record in the car. I mean, even though I think there was some crazy contraption they made in the 70s, but whatever. I don't want that anymore.
Well, if you had the guys from West Coast Customs pimp my ride, I'm sure they could sort something out for you in the back of the car.
Yeah, I got this week, which is not vinyl, and I really am not a big fan of tapes, but I had to get this.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is fucking cool.
It's crazy. Like, there's 18 tapes in it, and like patches, and there's a book. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. No, that is very, very cool. I will ask you this question, though. What is your stance? And for those that are listening to this on Spotify, he's just held up a very handsome dissection box set. My question to you is, what is your stance on Rain Chaos?
I like Rain Chaos a lot. I mean, it's a different record than the first two, but I like it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think it's one of those albums to me where I think when Notfight was coming out of prison and he was talking about what Rain Chaos was going to sound like, he was describing it as the most evil. I mean, literally in his words, like the most evil record ever made, and it's the darkest thing Dissection has ever done. And I was a big fan, especially of Storm of the Lightsbane. And then so I was expecting kind of I don't know what I was expecting. I think in my mind's eye I was thinking, Storm of the Lightsbane with Ad Majorem Satanas Gloriam by Gorgoroth kind of thrown in for extra measure. And then this record comes out that, I don't know, it just sounded very unoffensive to me. I don't know.
Stuff he was talking about was probably more like what he was into in the lyrical content rather than maybe music direction, but I don't really know. Because the record's more like kind of like a heavy metal, black metal influenced record rather than being especially Gorgoroth or anything in that range.
Yeah. That kind of snarling, face ripping black metal.
I mean, he was in jail for a long time. I mean, like the guy had to be like a completely different human by the time he got out of there.
Yeah, well, some dudes come out and they're, they have even more intensity. I mean, Samoth spent from Emperor, he spent 6 months, I think, in jail. Came out and did some of his best work. Gall, I think, arguably did some of his finest work post prison. And by the way, I've said this many times on the podcast. Gall's Verd I absolutely adore. I think it's like one of the it's the only black metal band like where I feel like at its core it's absolutely black metal, but it's done with completely with clean singing. And if you had to like write down the elements of the band on a piece of paper, and you said to someone, "What style of music is that?" Black metal is definitely not something that's going to come into the discussion.
Yeah, agreed.
But so, just on the topic of Notvight, did you see any of those last interviews that were done with him? There's a couple that are kind of floating around on YouTube.
I've seen a couple on YouTube. I think I know the ones you're talking about.
He was an intense man.
Yes, especially I can't remember if I compared some of the older ones to the way he was then, but he doesn't I think like he was in prison for what 8 years or something. Like I would say it definitely changed. You can see like just the look on like how he seemed to appear, like how he appeared before and after. I mean, I don't know him personally, so I'm just speaking off of watching videos, but
yeah.
Like that kind of change you.
It will, but then I've always thought, and I probably speak out of complete ignorance here. I've watched many documentaries about prison in America. I've never watched any documentaries about prison in Sweden, but I wouldn't imagine that Swedish prison would be quite as tough as American, maximum security, which is where he would have ended up, no doubt.
Yeah, I would say it's from what I've seen, it looks a lot different in America than it does in Scandinavian prisons.
Yeah, it looks a bit more civilized. I don't think you. I mean, I'm not sure about the shower situation, but I would imagine a trip to the canteen isn't quite as potentially life threatening as as it is in the States. But I wanted to ask you, as we're on the topic, where did your love for black metal start? Because it listening to this album, it's clearly something that's been with you for a very, very lengthy period of time. Like, I'll talk to you in a second about kind of my takeaways listening to the album, but there's definitely, I mean, when you hear this, it speaks of somebody who's not just started listening to black metal a year ago and decided, I know I'm gonna give this tremolo picking and screaming malarkey a try.
I really got into black metal. It was somewhere like right when Venomous started. Before then, I listened to a couple bands here and there, but Greg and Venomous showed me Watain and Dissection, and I was like, "What is this?" And then it just kind of ensued after that.
What is this? And where can I buy my first spike-studded armbands?
I was like, "What else can I listen to? Give me more of this." Things just obsessed.
Yeah.
But also, especially I can say other things around it, like black metal stuff. Also love things and that like that kind of fit in that world, like stuff like In Solitude, Devil's Blood, things like that too.
And when it comes to like the harsher side of black metal, like I mentioned Gorgoroth earlier, stuff like Funeral Mist, Marduk, Mayhem. Did you ever get into that kind of thing?
I would say at this point now, just all over the board, just because I feel like there's so many different aspects of it, because you can go something that's more, there's like rock influence stuff, or just some straight, just old raw things, or you can barely hear what's going on, but everything's just there and just intense, like, like kind of bone chilling and things like that. But,
well, the new Funeral Winds album, I spoke about that on this when we are recording this week's podcast. But I mean, that's fucking brilliant. It's got that same spontaneous vibe that Battles in the North by Immortal has, where that album, I can't remember, I don't know if the legend is real, but I know from what I've heard it was recorded in 2 takes. There's tons of mistakes retained on the record. It's just they came in, start blasting for Satan, and half an hour later you're done. But it's Funeral Winds captures that same spontaneity, and I love that. I mean, I love that the black metal genre generally is as broad as it is, and there's so much to experience. And again, I want to talk to you a little bit about the American black metal scene as well, because I kind of feel like it's a scene that for many years a lot of people slept on, wrongly in my opinion. But I think where black metal has gone from the early days of De Mysteries Dom Satanas and albums like that to where it is today, by far to me the most exciting music genre on the planet.
Well, with America's very huge, so it's hard sometimes when you're like, okay, well, American black metal. So I think if you want to think of the cheesiest way of it, you could think of Death Heaven or something like that. But which I don't really even think
Just
is
about to
black
say,
metal.
don't be calling Death
Yeah,
Heaven black metal on this
yeah.
podcast, mate.
So, but I don't know, like, say what, and in America, I would consider U.S. black metal just bands that are from America. I don't know how it comes across from Europe, but you have, say, bands like Wolves in the Throne Room or Uada from Pacific Northwest, and like culture, like our climate up there and kind of like vibe is similar to, say, Scandinavia and things like that, and they have a completely different sound than, say, something like Goat Whore or something that's from New Orleans. And then it's just all across the board, just so many different places. But
there's like an earthiness to me about US black metal. I don't know what other word I can use to describe it, but like whenever I think of US black metal, the first bands that come to mind, the number one band that comes to mind to me, and it's not necessarily my favorite band from the country, but it's a country that for me is like the mayhem of North America, and that's Cobalt.
yeah.
And then I'll think of bands like Eccles, Tombs, Gotor. But there's, with all those bands, there's kind of as I said, there's a real sort of earthiness to me about them. Wolves in the Throne Room, exactly the same, especially this new record. And it's almost like that. They use the word Americana to sort of talk about, especially to talk about Cobalt's music and to talk about some of the American Gothic type influences that permeate through that stuff. But there's an undercurrent of that for me in almost every US black metal record that I've heard and that I've really liked. And I think that's almost kind of what gives it its character. And again, this is one of the things that I love so much about the style is that you have all these scenes in all these different countries, and each of the scenes seems to sort of have its own unique traits. Like the French black metal bands have a distinct feel. In Poland, it's the same thing. Australia, it's the same thing. But America, there's definitely that earthiness to it. That kind of at one with nature, but also sort of, I guess, harnessing the different energies of nature in the creation of the music. And again, I've only been drinking Diet Coke tonight, so I'm not I'm not drunk or talking out my ass here. But I think I suspect you might know what I mean.
I know what you mean, because it's one of those things that's hard to describe, because it's something you can feel in it, and it's there, but actually putting words on it are a little different. But America, like, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it, like American wise versus, but I don't know. Let's just go with Texas wise, at least for, like, say, like us, like we're from Texas. A lot of the bands heavily influenced from black metal, or not black metal, from death metal. I'm really, really into heavy metal. Like, I book a heavy metal festival called Hell's Heroes, like obsessed with heavy metal. So, and Texas is super hot. Like, it's most of the year, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but, somewhere like 80, 90 degrees. I mean, what it is Celsius, it's 80, 90 degrees here. So it's hot. So I would say, especially with some of the, like the way our sound ends up being, it's like the tone's warmer or more robust, like something like along the lines of, like, say, Rotting Christ and things like that, where it's the fact that they're from Greece completely influences how they sound, opposed to, say, like, because the way they sounded compared to, like, anybody that's going at the same time that was from Scandinavia.
Also, though, in Texas, you guys have, I mean, aside from the hot weather, you also have great food. So there's less of a reason to be upset with the world and society and again, no disrespect to Scandinavia, I've never been there, so I don't know what their food is like. The food in the UK was fucking abysmal when I first moved here. It's gotten better, but it's not Texas. I've never been to Texas. I want to go. I'll have to go for work to Houston, probably at some point next year. And I plan on going on a starvation diet prior to doing so, and then literally eating about 3 years worth of calories in the space of however long I'm there, hitting every single
everywhere.
Oh, dude! So every Texas barbecue spot.
One of my best friends opened a barbecue spot that's like half a mile from my house, and he's amazing. But Houston, I feel like even with other cities in Texas has better culinary stuff than all of them. We
Oh, really?
do restaurants, and so it's just it's insane.
Yeah. So what's the just so you can plug him on the podcast? What's the spot called? And also so I know for when I come to visit.
His name's Willow. Hold on, let me see what it's actually called. It used to be called Willow's Texas Barbecue, and now this place is called, I think it's called J Mac. He's gonna yell at me for not knowing this off the top of my head.
He's gonna yell at you for not having it tattooed on your arm.
Yeah, I think it's J Mac. Let's just go with it's that. But it's right outside of downtown, like in the East End.
Yeah.
He's just doing tasting stuff. Like I went there earlier for like friends and family stuff, and they officially open in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Now, I will for sure be adding that. I'll for sure be adding that to the list. Do you do any barbecuing yourself?
I've done it a couple times during quarantine stuff, just because I had nothing else to do, and the guy I'm talking about also lives around the corner from me, so he would be like, "What is it?" He would come over and be like, "Okay, what are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "All right, let's try this." So, I mean, I do like a pork butt. It takes like, it's like 10 hours of me running around trying to make sure this fire is not going crazy.
Yeah,
everything came out good, but it's a lot of work. I'm just all this.
Oh
is great.
Yeah.
So I'm down to smoke some chicken or something. It takes like an hour or two or something. But I'm like, dude, if you want to smoke a pork butt or some brisket for 17 hours, like I'll just pay you to do this.
I do like because I'm obsessed with it, by the way, completely obsessed. So I'll spend literally an entire afternoon just watching barbecue videos online, and then I'll be like, okay, I've got this idea, I need to go try out. But I mean, if I do a brisket now, then I'll wake up at about probably 4 in the morning, 3-4 in the morning to start prepping, and then getting the fire going, getting up to temp. If it's winter over here, it's shit because it takes longer, and I also live in the countryside, so it's colder. But yeah, it's a good, like probably 18-19 hour process.
Yeah, long.
The victories and the struggle.
He lives around the corner from me, so when he's testing stuff, he's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Well, at the house, what's up? Well, if you want some ribs, you need to come over now. I'm like, okay. So I'm just like, go to his house, and he's like, let me know what you think.
Yeah.
Look out.
Well, like I said, another reason for folks in Texas to probably be a little bit more content with life than their counterparts in Europe. But I did check out, or I did check you out online, obviously, before we spoke, and I had a gander at Hell's Euros. You've got a seriously spicy seriously spicy lineup for next year. Candlemass, Dark Angel.
Yeah, next year, the one in 2020 got canceled because it's in the festival's in April or March or whatever. So it got canceled. Instead of kind of push it back, I just canceled everything out. And then I was like, okay, looks like 2021. I'm all, nah, this ain't gonna happen. So I kind of just went crazy on 2022, and it worked out.
And 2022 will be your fourth one that you've done?
It'll be the third one, because the third, yeah, it'll officially be the third one, but at this point it's been 5 years. Just the last 2 years were off because of COVID.
Yeah. And so the cancellation that you had to do in 2020, did you get hosed on that financially?
I work, like, as my job that I do every day is I'm a concert promoter. So it was a rough 2020. But I mean, as far as ticket sales and stuff, we just had to refund everything. Like we had to eat some marketing money and some things like that. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it was so many other shows that canceled that it wasn't like, say, anything different than the rest of them, besides the fact that I had probably about 50 times more work on it than the rest of the shows.
Yeah. What made you decide to start doing a festival of your own?
There's some festivals in the States, definitely not as many as there are in Europe. And there was only a couple heavy metal festivals, and there was nothing in the South. And, the other ones are like California and the Northeast are very far from here. So I feel like I was like, this gotta work down here, right? And I was like, if anyone's gonna do this, it's gonna be me. So I'll try it. And it worked out, so I was very happy.
I was just about to say, it's also surprising there's not more festivals in Texas, because Anytime I speak to any bands from the US, you'll kind of ask invariably, where do you guys get the best response? And, normally they'll say some of the major metropolitan centers, but Texas almost always comes up. So
there was some other things, like in Austin used to have a little more festivals, and then it's kind of things have fallen off or just gone away over the years and nothing really took their place. So
yeah.
But the South definitely didn't have any kind of like straight old school heavy metal festival. There was only a couple. I mean, I was saying there's only a couple of them in the States, like Frost and Fire and some others. So
yeah. So what would your ambitions be with a festival? Kind of where would you, in an ideal magic wand world, where would you like to take it?
I really like the fact that because it's 2 stages and it's inside, and I like it like that because I'm not a big fan of like giant open air festivals. That and like there's only a certain amount of bands in this genre that like to take it to wherever. Like I don't want to ever grow it where it's some 30,000 person festival with Metallica headlining or something like that. There is an outside area I've been debating on moving it for like a couple of years, except the weather in Houston's kind of unpredictable, so I haven't really done it. So this year sold out in like 10 days, and I was just like, cool, that's what it is.
So word of mouth is getting around for sure, right?
Yeah, because the previous the first year did pretty well, and the second year was almost twice as many people as the first year, and then this year was insane because usually we got to those numbers, but those were we'd sold those tickets throughout 6 months or a year of promoting, and then at the door like this day of the festival, and then this time we put it on sale, which I think was in a time everybody wanted. They were like looking forward to doing something, and like it was kind of like a hope of the future. But I mean, it went up and it sold out in 10 days.
Mm-hmm. And will the blueprint or the mantra for the show, or sorry, for the festival, would it always be traditional heavy metal? You wouldn't get a little, more of a Necrofier vibe into some of the bands playing?
Like it always like usually I don't want to put like one band that sticks way far out, so again it really depends on, say, sometimes I get the headliners. I don't think any like I don't know, we'll have to see. For the most part I'll say it'll stay mostly traditional, and there might be like some surprises and some things like that, but we'll see.
I would have said to you, I'd come down and have some barbecue and go to the festival if you have Wasp on, but I feel a bit embarrassed seeing.
I want to get Wasp so bad, but I don't even know if that'll ever happen. I feel like they only will play Europe and they'll never play the States or something weird, because every time they're like Wasp World Tour that happens every couple of years, and it's always like Europe. I'm like,
well, they're just doing their 40th anniversary now. It was just announced, like they started selling tickets for it, I think 2-3 days ago.
Like previous to this, whenever they announced something, it was only Europe, and then it was like, cool, only Europe tour. And I've tried to find some way to contact them, and there's been like to no avail. I'm like, could someone just like please just be like, cool, we're never playing the United States. No, we're not going to play a festival that has hell in it because Black Lawless is super Christian now. Like, whatever.
I was about to say that's another thing that's sad, because now he's leaving off some of their finest work from the set list. I mean, it's not Wasp if he doesn't do Animal.
I don't like Fuck Like a Beast is coming on there.
No, he's openly said he'll never sing it again. Also, though, he has also begun to look like, and I, mean no disrespect, because he was my Euro when I was at school for a long time, but he has started to look like that aunt in your family that you are embarrassed by, who turns up and everyone kind of eventually warms to her, and like says, that's Aunt Barbara or something like that. But when she first turns up there and the makeup is all smeared and she smells of booze, it's
it definitely looks a little bit different. But even then, like I feel like they put out some album on Napalm probably maybe in the last 10 years, and I was like, what? So like, I was like, what? So I clicked on like a lyric video, and it starts going, and everything sounds like Wasp, and it's going, and then you start like the lyrics are going across the stage, and I'm like, was that a cross? Was that this? Did you just talk about something? Oh man, they're like a Christian band now. What's going on?
I was about to say, if you can comfortably share a stage with Stryper, then something has gone wrong. But
the last European tour was really good, so I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. If Wasp was playing anywhere near me, I'd go in a heartbeat.
Yeah. No, there are a band I definitely do want to see at some point, but like I said, I'm a bit dubious about some of the about some of the songs that would be omitted from the set list. Like I mean, if I don't hear 9-5 Nasty, Manimal, I want to hear Sleep in the Fire, and I obviously Fuck Like a Beast, but as I said, that's for sure not happening. Sleep in the Fire won't be happening either. So, I do think, though, on the topic of Wasp, they don't get their comeuppance from a lot of the metal scene. Like the fact that people still talk about Motley Crue, but they don't talk about Wasp, or they still talk about Skid Row, but you very rarely. I mean, it was only really when they did that Crimson Idol, reimagining or whatever it was, which they should never have done. I think, because I thought that record was perfect as it was. You just don't hear from them. And actually, for that era, for that time, I mean, their music was way darker and way edgier than Skid Row or Motley Crue or any of that other nonsense.
That's probably why they still have, like, I don't know. I feel like Wasp is more of like in that, even though they were a big band at a time, I feel like now they're almost more of like a cult thing than it is, especially something like Motley Crue or Skid Row or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and speaking of embarrassment, old Vince Neil toppling over on the stage. He looks like what's his name? What's that dude? The comedian that everyone used to like so much. The guy that screamed a lot. He was on. You know what I'm talking about, Sammy something. But yeah, that's basically the road that Vince has traveled. Back to Necrofier. So you guys, I mean, you're working with Century Media now, and it's not Century Media, sorry, Season of Mist. And Season of Mist is a label I talk about an awful lot on the podcast, in part because I love the bands on the label, and I also think that, of people that I've come across on labels, Katie is far and away one of the best people to deal with, one of the most consummate professionals, and just generally somebody who I just get on with really well. But I was going to ask you, as a band working with us, with this label, given your experience in the past, what has it been like? They strike me as very much as a label that are kind of, by fans for fans.
Season Mist has been really great. They were our first choice as a label, and luckily it happened. But everything they've done for us has been great. Katie's amazing. I come with a bunch, she's like, she brings all this stuff to the table, and then I come up with crazy requests, and she's like, cool, and everything makes all this stuff happen. I feel very welcome there, especially for being a newer band on, like a label that's been there forever. Because, I've been on labels and they're just like, cool, whatever, here's your record, it's out, whatever. But I feel like they really care and invest time into their bands, and that's what makes them different.
Yeah. They definitely seem to treat most of their releases, they seem to treat like a bit of an event. There is like there's a build up to it. I think Deborah Morty is quite similar as well. I think the work they did with Ecclese last year was outstanding, and what they're doing with Archgoat this year is really good as well. And actually, just circling back to US black metal, and I know I've mentioned them already, but did you check out that last Ecclese record?
I don't.
It's called Melano.
I don't think so.
You're about to have your life changed. Straight after this, go on to Spotify or something like that and go and give it a listen. It is fucking insane. Like, I know Nas, the main man in the band, he's been quoted as saying it's like the manifestations of his nightmares put to music. It is some of the fucking darkest, grimmest, most intense shit you'll ever hear in your life. It's genius. Oh wait, yes, you are a genius.
No, yes, I listened to that record and it's absolutely insane.
Yeah,
sorry,
nuts.
I couldn't understand what you were saying, and I was like, okay, I'm not going
to. I dare you insult my accent. I would have thought Californians moving.
That record is insane. It is like it has like a terrifying vibe to it. Like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on?
I know. Well, the thing is, it's not. It's terrifying. But one thing that he's extremely good at doing is he's extremely good at building anticipation in a song. Like, I think it's track 5. There's like this. I mean, probably about 2 minutes where it's just this like, duh, and then this riff is playing, and then the drum beat hits again, and then when the song finally starts, it's just like all hell breaks loose. I mean, again, when it comes to dynamics, the dude is an absolute fucking master, and not widely recognized enough, in my opinion. But one thing about this record of yours, I've listened back to it quite a few times now, and I was curious to get your take on something. So when I listened to it, I love the record, and it reads to me like a very capable, very enjoyable and very entertaining love letter to all of the bands that you love, and which is great. And then around about the second to last track, "Betrayal of the Queen," the record seems to kind of take quite a significant tonal shift, and that song for me sort of becomes, it sounds doomier, it sounds a lot darker, and weirdly enough, that track and then Plague Requiem, which comes straight after, both of those songs sound extremely personal to me. And actually for me, that's the highlight of the record, which is great, because I love when a record kind of builds up and then kind of finishes off on this high note. But those two songs in particular struck me as being far more personal, or potentially more personal to you as somebody who's written them and who's written the lyrics and the music and stuff like that, than anything that came before. I guess first question: am I reading too much into that?
Not necessarily. I would say, okay, so "Betrayal of the Queen" is a song I wrote. Me and my wife went to Bali some years ago, and if you've been, Bali's insane. There's statues, temples, everything everywhere. It's a real magic kind of place. But the song is about a Balinese queen that was betrayed for like witchcraft. So the song's written like as in her singing, like, just basically that why, and like everything she did was like for good, but whatever, she was exiled. But the song is, it's definitely doomier than I'd say the rest of the songs on the record. But I mean, just like saying the rest of the album, we were trying to do stuff where like every song or everything works together, and you can like see the influences, but but everything's kind of different. There's tons of bands that just blast beat like an entire record, and I absolutely love stuff like that, except we were just trying to do something different.
Yeah.
And Plague Requiem is basically just a super blasphemous track of like us sampling old Christian preachers saying weird things, and people that like, just things like that. Just
it does feel very oddly contemporary, though. I mean, not just in the name Plague Requiem, but it does kind of, there's a sort of doomsday feel to it, especially with all those preachers being sampled, and it kind of has like, if I have to think of a black metal track that epitomizes the last 18 months, that's the song.
Thanks. Yeah.
So it reminds me a little bit of there's a song by Funeral Mist. I can't remember the name now, but probably the first 4 minutes of the song is just like black metal, but with a sample of a televangelist, and he's like, he starts talking about how, if you think I'm a wrathful God, blah blah blah. It's fucking brilliant. It's like you've never come across a band who can make. I had never come across a band who could make a televangelist sound so sinister until I heard Plague Requiem.
Like when we were doing that, I did all the research for most of that, so I just sat on YouTube watching televangelists and other things, and just I don't even know what I would type in. Just stuff like it just kept going, and then I must have watched hours and hours of some of that stuff, and it got pretty. It was terrifying at some point. I'm just like, holy shit, like, because all that stuff's real. This is not. Like this, you're not watching movies or something like that. These are guys in front of large groups of people saying all this and people reacting to it.
And they make an extraordinary amount of money as well. Like, what's that dude's name? Like the Ted or something or other. I can't remember his surname, but he's like one of the most successful televangelists. I want to say Ted Larson, but I don't I don't think he is. But he's I can't remember how much he's made, but anyway, it turned out that he was a meth addict as well, which then was pretty funny. I have to find out who it is, but
all those guys are hiding something, or like they're trying to cover up for whatever in their life.
So I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole you went though, but did you see have you ever seen this guy? His name is like Prophet Rodney or something. They use a sample of him doing one of his deliverance sessions at the start of the new Impaled Nazarene record, and he's basically talking to this woman, and the woman says to him how she had an oral sex demon visit her. And now her private parts are itching her. And then the guy like begins the exorcism. He's based out of New York. He begins the exorcism. It's like, oral sex, use oral sex, get out of her. It's fucking, and then she starts convulsing, and it looks like she's about to pass out. And she starts making these like weird screams and stuff, and then she's crying. It's fucking brilliant.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, that stuff, it just kept going, and then it got bad. Like I found like real clips people put together of like best ones, and it's just like, oh god, where's this going?
I was wrong. It's not Prophet Rodney. It's Prophet Ed Citronelli. So I'll send you this clip when
there's like there's stuff from the 80s, 90s now. I mean, there's even some stuff where like it's like from the 50s of people like just old Catholic priests, like hour and a half sermons on just whatever, burning in hell because of whatever.
Because I listened to Necrofier.
Yeah, probably.
So, one other band that, or another project that you've got going as well as Night Cobra, which I must confess I wasn't overly familiar with before I started checking you out. You've put out one record with Night Cobra so far?
We put out an EP last year during the pandemic, and we haven't really. I mean, we played a couple shows, like 2 shows since, but that's about it. So, yeah, Night Cobra is fairly new. But we have a full length coming out in High Roller in February.
Oh, very cool! I like the name as well. Very like again, it feels like very knowingly nostalgic, but in a cool way.
And Night Cobra is a completely different vibe, where it's kind of like a Escape from New York, Blade Runner, post-apocalyptic, but like still all heavy metal, with some kind of not musically, but the rest of it like synth-waved influence, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
Like, and so kind of stuff, all that kind of vibe.
So what else do you have on your plate at the moment? Like, what is the next? If all goes to plan, and freedom continues to reign in the Lone Star State and in Florida, what what are your plans for the next 6 months?
It's still kind of, I mean, trying to look for some tours, and it seems like stuff's happening. So I feel like spring's gonna start where everybody will be maybe like international tours more regularly, because there's ones happening now. I mean, Cradle of Filth's over here. I think they're still over here, and some things like that. So just kind of trying to figure it out. But the thing is, a lot of these tours or whatever have been worked on for a long time and pushed back, especially say like festivals for next year in Europe and things like that. So just trying to figure out when and where we can figure out something to work. But I feel like we'll be on the road sometime next year. Just everything set.
And a lot of the complaints I've heard as well from bands around that is kind of the queue and the backlog of bands wanting to go on tour, and you also can't get into a situation where it's like Subway putting up a franchise every 250 meters. You can't have a situation where there's like a new band or a different band playing the same town or the same city every other day, because then you oversaturate the market.
There's been, I mean, this fall is pretty stacked up with a lot of tours. I mean, there's been a handful that have canceled, but for the most part, there's a lot of shows. The spring, if it goes according to plan, will be a lot of shows. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is backlog stuff that's just been pushed back and keeps going. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I assume you'll be demanding a proof of vaccine from everyone, and then also making sure that you contact Blabbermouth to let them know that you're doing it and that you're following a strict vaccine mandate.
So, like New York and some places have vaccine mandates. Texas, there's not.
Greg Abbott outlawed that, I think.
Yeah, Texas was basically like they'll go after your liquor license essentially if you try to say that you can do vaccine only. But what they ends up doing is it's like vaccine, or if you have a vaccine, you can come, or you have to bring a negative COVID test within 72 or 48 hours, if not.
Yeah,
it seems to work pretty easy. There's not too many complaints. I mean, there's some people that just I feel like aren't going to shows again yet, and there's some still there's a lot of shows I've had that just people really want to go. I guess they're just going.
Yeah, I saw some live footage of Deerside playing, and those people did not give a fuck about COVID.
We did a little run with Goat Whore and Frozen Soul in Texas in August, and everything seemed to went really well. But it was like 2 weeks after all that Delta stuff, so the shows did super. I mean, the shows were all crazy, but I feel like if the Delta thing wouldn't pop around, it might have been even more insane because I feel like that scared off a decent amount of people. Because even like the Oscar show we had was sold out, and I would say it was good out of the 200 or 300 people that were supposed to be at the show. There was at least 100 or more people that like just didn't show up.
Yeah.
Club inside, worried about it, things like that.
Well, I had in September what I thought was what I think was the Delta variant. I tested positive for COVID, but I felt so shit. I very nearly called old Ed Citronelli and asked him for deliverance. Literally the fucking worst I've ever felt. But brother, thank you so much for your time. I had an absolute blast catching up with you, and yeah, again, congratulations on an awesome debut. I think it's I'm hoping we're going to hear a lot more of you, and I know this record is going to do really, really well for you. I think it's superb.
Thank you very much. But don't forget to hit me up when you come down.
Yeah, no, I definitely won't do, mate. I'll definitely won't forget. I've already spoken to Katie about that, and she said she'll fly down as well. So we could get a couple of folks together. Hangfire, I'm gonna stop recording. That was a track called Madness Descends by Necrofier off their new record, Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, named by more than a few as one of the debuts of the year. And, I think Christian should be definitely very proud of what this record is achieving in terms of hype. Great guy as well, and really fun having him on the podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. And make sure that you go and check out that album. I think it's on the Season of Mist Bandcamp. It should be on the Necrofier Bandcamp. Buy yourself the CD, the vinyl, the t-shirt, and you remember to let them know when you do so that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you there. Speaking of new music, first up, let's talk about the new Doedsvangr. The album is called Serpents of Old. It is the sequel to Satan of Sons, which came out in 2017. You'll recall, if you follow the news section, that I speculated a few weeks ago that Deborah and Morty might do in 2021 what they did in 2020, which, if you'll recall, they kind of seemed to drop just some of the year's best records in short order towards the back end of the year. And I think last year we got Selbst, Aversio Humanitatis, and Ecclese pretty much bang after each other. All three of those records appeared in my top 5 of 2020. This year, we are gifted with upcoming or new records by Archgoat, Plebeian Grandstand, the single of which I've heard and absolutely blew me away. And then Doedsvangr, which is obviously the band we're talking about right now. This band, for those of you that don't know, feature members of Horner, Tudor, Norgevel, and a host of other relatively well-known Finnish and Norwegian names. And pretty much, if you were to be unfamiliar with their sound and imagine in your mind's eye what they were to sound like, I think you'd probably come up with something fairly similar to what ends up coming out on the record. I mean, this band really seemed to wrap up some of the finest elements of Norwegian second wave black metal riffery with a very strong Finnish, maybe slightly Swedish influence. But I think the thing that they do extremely well is they execute that rap in a way that belies only true masters of their craft. There are 9 tracks on Serpents of Old. I think personally, first and foremost, if you are familiar with Satan of Sons, these tracks blow a complete hole through that record. But they really also wipe the floor, in my opinion, and maybe this will be controversial to say, but I think they wipe the floor with anything that any of the band members in this project have produced in their day jobs in at least the last 10 years. The record starts off simply enough with a couple of tracks that, really kind of wear those Emperor and Mayhem influences on their sleeve. And then around track 5, a track called Whitefinger, the band really kind of slow it down, but creatively they hit the high gears where they kind of bring in a lot more atmosphere. Maybe some slightly progressive elements to the track. The track is a bit longer than those songs preceding it. But this, to me, is where they work at their absolute best, and where every single aspect of this record can really kind of stand out and breathe and shine. Firstly, the production for me, throughout the album is absolutely superb. I mean, it really comes out when they slow things down. But the drums in particular have this real slam to them, which I just love. The performances are uniformly top notch. And again, I will go as far as to say that Doets Admiral, better known as Anders Hansen of Norgevel, probably turns in his finest vocal work to date. It's really aggressive and spiteful and hateful and everything that's great about black metal vocals. Frankly, in any other year, this would easily merit inclusion in my top 5. Whether it will make it into my top 5 this year, I said at the top of the show, I want to spend a bit more time listening critically to some of the stuff that's coming out this year before I make that decision, or finalize the decision, I should say. The only thing stopping me from kind of committing to that right now is the fact that there's so much good stuff coming out in 2021. For the most part, this is 10 out of 10 absolutely spectacular black metal. And like I said, Deborah and Morty are coming out swinging for the fences at the end of the year. So I am going to play the track that I mentioned earlier, my favorite track on the album. This is a song called Whitefinger. There was a song called White Finger by Doedsvangr off their new record, Serpents of Old. It is available right now on Deborah Morty Productions. And do make sure that if you head over there and you buy yourself some stuff, you let them know who sent you. Those guys obviously have an open invite if they want to come on the podcast at any point. But great stuff in my opinion. And again, like I said, Deborah Morty swinging for the old fences at the back end of the year. Next up, I want to talk about the new Ghost Bath record, Self-Loather. It is available right now on Nuclear Blast. It is the sequel to 2017's Star Mourner. And I think some folks might be looking at this and going, why the fuck is Jackie talking about Ghost Bath? Considering that in the past, they have been compared frequently to a band I have been mean about on more than a few occasions, Deaf Heaven. Now, I make no bones about the fact that I think Deaf Heaven is an absolute load of shit. I don't like their visuals. I don't like their modus operandi. I think that for the most part, major chords in black metal should be abolished by law. And again, some people might like it. I just don't. And for that very reason, I had ignored Ghost Bath for a fair length of time. And then a couple of months ago, you may have recalled me mentioning this on the news segment. I checked out the first single to Self-Loather that Nuclear Blast put out, and I was surprisingly very impressed. I think as I've come to spend more time with the record, I now know why, and also obviously having spoken with Dennis, the main man, the vocalist, the guitarist, and the guy who's responsible for writing most of the music. One of the things that he spoke about in his interview, which you'll hear next week, is that he has allowed on this record for the band members to be a lot more involved in the writing process. And I think what that has led to is some of his more progressive, maybe verging on Deaf Heaven-like tendencies, they have kind of polished and just brought to heel somewhat, so that when it's used, it's actually used effectively and it sounds very cool. But equally, it's kind of you have this constant musical antithesis of more traditional black metal elements juxtaposing it, and making all of the songs on the record sound really, really cool, but also very often very creative. And I would say there is definitely less of a direct comparison available between Ghost Bath and Deaf Heaven on this record, and maybe something more akin to Shining or something in more, I dare say, traditional depressive black metal realms. But from my perspective, I'm not hugely familiar with Funeral, Moonlover, or Star Mourner, but this album I've been very pleasantly surprised by. I continue to find it very enjoyable. I think all of the performances are excellent. I love the creativity of the record. There are moments here where you're going to hear piano. There's just use of things that either will kind of make you feel uplifted, or, for example, on the second song, Hide from the Sun, there's this woman weeping at the start of the song. I don't know whether it's recorded during the Trump inauguration. Some of you guys will remember that woman that was screaming at the sky during the inauguration, but that ill-timed joke aside, a woman is weeping, and it actually it sounds genuinely disconcerting when you listen to it. And there's a disconcerting atmosphere throughout the record that I think that Ghost Bath have done very, very well, and they blend it in extremely well with all of the more traditional black metal elements that are present on this record. So whether you like this band or not, I think it's worth giving them a try. I think this song that I'm about to play makes a very, very good case to demonstrate that. This is Shrines of Bone. That was Ghost Bath with Shrines of Bone off the record Self-Loather. It is available right now on Nuclear Blast Records. And if you like what you heard, then get ready to be happy, because as I've said many times on this podcast so far, Dennis Mikula is going to be on the show next week to talk about the record and to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. Very fun conversation. I think we did a good hour and 15 minutes too, so it's another long one. But you're for sure going to want to check that out. Another thing you're going to want to check out is the next 20 minutes or so of me heading over to Metal Storm and talking some straight trash about the latest metal news headlines. And first up, we read that Hypocrisy has dropped a new single that will be featured, or taken off of, I should say, their soon-to-be-released new full-length Worship, which will be available on November the 26th. This is not a record I'm necessarily looking forward to. The song is called Children of the Grey. I have listened to it. It sounds basically like you would imagine the song is going to sound if you get through the first 10 seconds or so. There's like a clean intro, or clean guitar intro, I should say. And then the riff kind of follows the intro virtually note for note, followed by growling, blah, blah, blah. There is a little bit of a charm to some of these new Hypocrisy singles. The second one, not so much. It's absolutely terrible. The first one that came out, I thought was shit, but it was like shit that you think could grow on you. And Children of the Grey is kind of the same. I mean, I think if anybody's a Hypocrisy fan, they're going to love this record. I know A&P Reacts, or Pedro from A&P Reacts has raved about this. And I've seen a few other folks who've had the what's his face, the promos sent to them, love it, but I myself am not so positive. Darkane, new album in the making. It's been a while since we've heard any news from the Swedes Darkane. Now we can report that Death Thrashers are recording new tunes for their full-length album, the first one since 2013's Sinister Supremacy. I've never been a huge Darkane fan, but I will say there was I did catch them live once, and they were fantastic. They were on a bill with Disbelief, and both bands are not bands that I would spend a huge amount of time listening to on I was about to say on CD, but listening to in any guise. But they were very, very good when I saw them play. So I'll take that for what it's worth. Slipknot unleash new single. Slipknot have unleashed a brand new standalone single called The Chapeltown Rag. It's available for streaming as a visualizer via YouTube channel down under. Check it out now. I don't think that, I've just noticed now, they don't include Corey Taylor's explanation for it. I believe the song is about fake news. And I think the way he described it was how fake news gets echoed within the social media echo chamber. The song is absolutely fucking abysmal. I mean, if you like Slipknot, you'll probably like this. To me, this is like all the most cliched, annoying, irritating parts of Slipknot meshed together in a song. The lyrics are shit. The vocals are terrible. It kind of seems to not want to know what it wants to be from one riff to the next. It's absolute fucking nonsense, in my opinion. Which means I'm pretty sure the Slipknot fans will gobble it up like fucking socialist propaganda at a Bernie Sanders campaign. Anyway, let's move on. King 810 European headlining shows announced. I might actually go and watch that. I've said this before, and I'll probably get a lot of hate after the way that I just ragged on Slipknot, turning around and saying that I think King 810 are cool. But I mean, they've put out a lot of rubbish. But there are a couple of King 810 tracks and one record in particular, L'amour petit, which is fantastic. And they were a band I'd be interested to see live just because I've heard so much good things about them. David from King 810 may be a hard dude though, but that hairstyle is fucking atrocious. He best hope he doesn't end up in jail again with that shit, because I don't think shower time is going to go too well for him if that's the case. Cult of Luna to release the Long Road North studio album in February. Most people are big fans of Cult of Luna. They're never been a band that's attracted me all that much. But they're always a band that I'm curious to know what they're doing next. So I'll give that a listen. But yeah, nothing to really write home about so far in their back catalog, in my opinion. Venom Prison present new track and video. I'm not really interested in the new Venom Prison music. I had kind of followed some of the hype around this band, and because of that, I was interested in seeing their performance at Bloodstock. It was one of the worst and most embarrassing and cringeworthy things I've seen in my fucking life. I noticed on the Bloodstock YouTube channel that they have since removed all of the cruel and nasty things that people have said about the vocalist, whose voice on the day was really bad. But I can give her a pass on that, because the way I see it is, I've even experienced it to a very limited degree myself. It might be a situation where the monitors on stage weren't particularly good, and so she blew her voice out. I don't think it's her voice that's the problem as much as the way she fucking looked on stage. And I'm not expecting, before people go saying, "Oh, you wouldn't care if a man looked that way." Yes, I fucking would. It looked like she was wearing her pajamas on stage. You're playing. I don't know whether Venom Prison have played to a crowd of that size before, but if you're going to play to a 30,000 or 40,000 strong audience, at least put some fucking effort in. Try not to look like you've just rolled out of bed, after not having showered for 10 days, and then slapped on some fucking shitty bargain basement bullshit ass clothing. I mean, it's just not, I don't know. It just looked it looked embarrassing to me. I feel bad for her, because she's obviously talented. A lot of people like Venom Prison, but if that's the kind of low rent way in which you're gonna present yourself, I don't know. Then expect to get some flack. Naturally, though, every single person that said anything mean about them on that Bloodstock YouTube channel was called a hate monger and a misogynist and fucking blah blah blah. So again, I'm pretty sure people will be upset by what I've said. Yeah, but trust me, if you've listened to this news segment for any period of time, you'll know that I rip on the men way worse than I rip on the women. Dark Funeral unveil upcoming album title and release date. Swedish black metal legends Dark Funeral announced that their brand new full-length album entitled We Are the Apocalypse will be released on March 18th, 2022 via Century Media Records. One day later, on March 19th, they will perform a very special album release show at Fallan in Stockholm, Sweden, supported by special guests Samael and support act Aileen. Dark Funeral is, to me, one of the most overrated black metal bands on the face of the earth. They've got a couple of good songs, but for the most part, they're in the same league to me as Nagelfar. It's just not a band that's ever done anything for me. I remember seeing the video to Secrets of the Moon, and even back then, when there wasn't as much variety as there is now, it sounded to me like some nonsense that somebody would come up with in their garage. That had just been slapped with some relatively decent production. But for the most part, I mean, I know they're legendary, and I know a lot of people are influenced by them, but they're not my thing, and they never will be. Der Weg einer Freiheit. This is this new record of theirs, Nocturne, which comes out on November 19th, so actually not very far from now, is one that Katie has recommended to me many, many times. She thinks it's fantastic. I listened to this new track, Immortal, and it's interesting, is how I would describe it. It kind of has this almost Western feel to it, like Western stroke Madrugada, if you are familiar with that band, type feel to it, before it goes into sort of more of a black metal vibe. But definitely something that I think sounds very unique. And I also saw somebody on Facebook the other day talking about the record. They'd heard the whole thing. And they felt like it was very experimental, but, that the band had stayed true to form. So the last Der Weg einer Freiheit record, it was good, but it was never something that, was so good that I kind of felt compelled to go back and listen to it again and again. But I think this one might be the one that could turn me. I'm curious to hear what the rest of the record sounds like. But if you haven't heard that song yet, it's well worth checking out. let's see what else there is to get excited about. The Night Eternal. And again, I think there should be a moratorium now on bands calling themselves anything to do with the night. It's just not. There's too many fucking bands doing that. Yob to tour Europe next spring. Another band that I wouldn't mind going to see live. But the thing with me now with catching any shows or any tours, I mean, it's a fucking whole operation because it takes me about 2.5 hours probably to get to London if I'm on a good day, and then I am reliant on the goodwill of my girlfriend, which I can tell you now with how much she likes sleeping, there's going to be no way she gets out of bed at fucking 11 at night, or more likely about 1 in the morning to come and pick me up at Newbury train station. So that means staying over at a hotel. I don't like shitty hotels, so it'll be quite expensive because I'll stay somewhere nice. I don't know. I'm gonna have to be a bit choosy when it comes to shows going forward. One I'm definitely gonna watch next year, Mayhem, because I already have tickets for that. And I don't know what else I'll go and catch, but my days of going to shows the way that I used to. I mean, I used to go to shows literally 2-3 times a week, and I remember working at a call center when I was 22 years old, and in 1 week I had gone to see, on the Sunday night I saw Sepultura, on the Monday night I saw 6 Feet Under at the Underworld, and Tuesday night I was front row for Slayer. And I remember the next morning at work, at about 10:15, 10:30 in the morning, I fell asleep at my desk, and I had someone come to wake me up and was like, "I think it's time. You have to go home." And I said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm feeling a bit sick." It was not feeling sick. It was being front row for Slayer, doing Rain and Blood as an encore, and losing my mind. I have also lost probably a significant amount of hearing. I don't have too bad tinnitus, but I definitely have nights where, like, my ears will really be ringing, and I'm very careful with how loud I put the hi-fi. I'm very careful with how loudly I listen to music on my headphones, but I think the damage is done, to be quite honest. Let's see if there's anything else that is of interest. Nocturnal Graves are standing there with a very sizable inverted cross. And also they're on Season of Mist, so that's another reason to check them out. Nocturnal Graves, it says here, Australian blackened death outfit Nocturnal Graves will be releasing their new long player, An Outlaw's Stand, on January the 7th, 2022 via Season of Mist Underground Activists. The 4-piece is now premiering their savage new single, Death to Pigs. I don't know whether Death to Pigs is a reference to the police, but I will say this: this whole ACAB, all cops are bastards movement can fucking do one, as far as I'm concerned. I am a big supporter of the police. I'm a big supporter of the fire brigade. I'm a big supporter of first responders. And I know that there are some bad eggs, but Jesus Christ, there are bad eggs in every fucking profession on the face of the earth. But it's always so funny to me when these all cops are bastards types need the police themselves. One of the biggest morons in the history of American politics, Ilhan Omar, the other day, was quoted as saying that the reason crime is up in, I think it's Minneapolis, where she was one of the cheerleaders pushing this defund the police garbage, was because the police are racist. Not because there's less police, not because police are nervous about getting involved in anything now. No, it's because the police are racist. So fuck her and fuck all these ACAB people and fuck anybody that I mean, again, can you just imagine the amount of stress that a human being, no matter who they are, is under day in and day out, patrolling, a dangerous neighborhood, being in a situation where, you can get shot, killed, whatever the case may be, every single time that you go to work. And I don't personally think, unless you've been in that situation, or unless you've experienced that, I don't frankly think you have anything to say about how, about the police in general. Like I said, yes, there's folks that, there are bad eggs. I personally think that could be largely solved by giving everybody body cams, which fuck knows why police departments can't find the funding for that, to be totally uniform. But yeah, I would much rather have more cops than less cops. I'll tell you that much. Ars Magna Umbra premiere Beyond the Stellar Gates. Ars Magna Umbra, for those of you that might have forgotten, released the number 19 record on my top 20 of 2020 last year. Loved it, and I fucking love the new music that I've heard off of this record as well. It says here, Beyond the Stellar Gates, the second preview tune off of the Ars Magna Umbra's forthcoming studio album, Thrown Between Worlds, has premiered online. The band's new outing sees its official release next Friday, November the 12th on Voidhanger Records. I will definitely be checking that out. I loved that record, and everything I've heard about this so far I love as well. Another band who I really like, and who I've often wondered, why they disappeared, is Enstiller. So it says here, Enstiller joined forces with Von Records, German black metal purveyors. Enstiller and Von Records label proudly announced that they have joined forces and signed a brand new contract. 8 years have passed since the release of their last full-length record, Capitulation 2013. Of course, the morons will be out in force decrying Enstiller as NSBM, which I know for an absolute fact because I've spoken to them. They have fuck all in common with that. They just happen to sing a lot about the Second World War and about the First World War. But anyways, they make some very cool music. I'm trying to think what the track is called. I might play it on next week's podcast, actually. It's called The Hurt Gene. Absolute genius. Like one of the nastiest, meanest black metal tracks you will ever hear in your life. So go onto YouTube and look for it. And then last one before I move over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. I mentioned this earlier in the Doedsvangr review. Plebeian Grandstand, upcoming album teaser revealed. This fucking blew me away. 3 weeks before the official release of Plebeian Grandstand's fourth album, Rin Nay Suffet, the extreme metal band unleash an incisive trailer. Though being rather short, the French musicians grant a precise glimpse into the conceptual thoughts as well as musical vision behind their coming long player. If this record is anything as good as their previous stuff, or as good as this trailer suggests it's going to be, you are in for a fucking whale of a ride on that one. What I heard blew me away. Loved it. All right. Let's move on to Blabbermouth. We get on to the first one. M Shadows, how Avenged Sevenfold got involved in NFTs. I'm starting to warm to the idea of NFTs, and I actually think that NFTs for bands is a really interesting idea. And I think a way for bands to kind of, keep making, or at least have kind of a recurring revenue, stream of revenue coming in, outside of selling music. So it says here, Avenged Sevenfold recently announced the Death Bats Club, a new level of connecting with fans based around non-fungible tokens or NFTs, digital assets, which could include free tickets for life, free meet and greets for life, airdrops over the course of each year, drum lessons, guitar lessons, golf lessons, giveaways, skip the lines at shows, poker nights, movie nights, etc. that can't be replicated. After an initial drop of 101 free NFTs to whet fans' appetites, they will release 10,000 at the end of November via AvengedSevenfold.io, with everyone who buys one becoming part of the community. I think Avenged Sevenfold's music is fucking swill, but like I said, I think they're onto something here, because my understanding would be you buy one of them NFTs, and then based on how well the band is doing and how big a demand for it is there out there, those things become more valuable, so you can kind of sell them and make some cash. But like I said, I think it's very cool. It says here, M Shadow said, "Well, we knew it was going to be a big leap for our fans to hear these words. These almost trigger words in the mainstream, which is crypto or blockchain or NFT. And so we knew if we wanted to do something like this, we needed to be respectful to the NFT communities that have already been built and how they roll. And me and Brian have been spending so much time in these Discords that we really wanted to kind of take that model and incorporate it into us. So we went to the band and we said, guys, we really think that we can offer the community much more by having our own tokens. And we went through example after example of giveaways, weekly dropping them stuff in the metaverse. Fucking metaverse. I don't know if you guys, everyone knows it, but the whole Facebook name change to Meta is the lamest thing I've ever heard. Because we've been building a sandbox for about a year. The sandbox, for anyone who doesn't know, is a metaverse where we're building out social hubs or building out games. So we're like, what if only token holders can play the games? Or what if we can give them avatars and include them in the games if you own the token? I'm not going to go through the whole article, but like I said, I like the idea of what they're doing here. And I think a lot more bands are going to do it. I think a lot more bands should do it. Because I think if nothing else, at the very least, I mean, I would love to own an NFT for Acrococker that demands that they play every single show ever in suits and shirts and ties. I bet you, if Jason and the gang put together an NFT where any show where the holder gets to demand that they play in suits, and every single show they attend, I bet you they could sell that for a lot of money. I'd pay a decent amount of cash for that. And I say that in view of the fact that this weekend, I missed it unfortunately, but this weekend they did that Goat of Mendes show at I believe it was the pre-show for Damnation Festival. Everything I saw of it looked incredible. And they looked fucking fantastic, and they looked like old Acrococker. For me, I said this on Twitter, but I will always be a fan of that band, no matter what. The Corazon to me is one of the best albums ever made, if not the best record of all time. For me personally. But there is something not right about seeing them in t-shirts and jeans. It's, to me, I don't like. Actually, I was gonna compare them to Iron Maiden, but let's say Rammstein. It's like seeing Rammstein without the fireworks, or like seeing Iron Maiden turn up on stage in jeans and t-shirts, no pyro, no Eddie, no nothing. There's just something about that. There's something about the atmosphere they create when they had those outfits on. That I think is just magical, and it was responsible for some of the very best shows I'd ever seen. And I think that without it, it just feels like there's something missing. Maybe not to somebody who hadn't seen them in full gear, but to me for sure. Anyway, let's move on. Watch Slipknot perform new single "The Chapeltown Horse Poo" live for the first time. No thanks. Metallica's released 40th anniversary limited edition ring. Lamb of God and Devil Driver singers invest in charity-minded cryptocurrency. Again, I saw this Chakra Coin apparently is a new cryptocurrency designed to foster community and invest in charitable causes. I did laugh at Professor Blythe's analysis here of him believing that crypto and Bitcoin and whatnot is a means to more equitably distribute wealth. It's like, no, it's not, you fucking simpleton. It is, number one, going to be regulated by governments very, very soon. Number two, it's also a prelude to governments having or giving you a digital wallet where they can dictate what you spend your money on. I think right now, get in while the getting's good if you're investing in crypto and you're making money out of it for sure. But you're not exactly redistributing wealth. You're creating wealth, if anything. I think it's a little dangerous, knowing what I know about investment and about finance. It's a bit risky, I think, creating wealth off of something that intrinsically doesn't necessarily have any value. Anyway. One thing I'll also say that I find laughable, if memory serves me correctly, and folks can correct me if I'm wrong here, if I'm being too hard on Randall, but has he not been one of these people that said he stopped eating steak because of methane gas and damage to the climate because of that? Crypto mining right now uses more electricity than the entire country of Argentina. Not to mention, or by comparison, I believe all of Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, and I think Amazon combined. And then people that are into that shit want to talk to me about eating steak. You can fuck right off. I mean, you can, as far as I'm concerned, you can do whatever you want. I'm not saying that, you should immediately stop your crypto trading or, get out of that Bitcoin game because it's bad for the environment. You can do whatever you want, but just, you do your crypto mining and your crypto games. And I'll eat steak for as many fucking meals of the day as I want. Anyway, like I said, I love Lamb of God, and it pains me that I find Randy Blythe increasingly so irritating. But I just, it's the same thing that I've said many times on this podcast. I don't understand why there's this. It's weak-minded people that need to cling to their musical heroes, but then rather than just admire them as a great musician or a great singer or great drummer, great guitarist, they then have to cling to every single thing that person says. And if that person says something that sounds like it might remotely chime with something that they believe, then all of a sudden that person's really switched on. He's really educated. No, they're not. The vast majority of big name folks that I see in the music industry talking, and this is true of all genres, by the way, talking about politics or talking about economics or anything like that, don't know what they're talking about in exactly the same way as if, one of the greatest investment minds of all time, Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, if they started talking to you about playing the guitar. It's exactly the same fucking thing. They might know what a guitar looks like. They might know, how to twang the old strings. Maybe they even know, how to plug the thing into a fucking amplifier. But they for sure don't know nearly as much about the guitar as Willie Adler of Lamb of God does. Likewise, Randy does not know jack shit about most of these things. It's fine for him to have an opinion, but it's less about him having the opinion. It's more about the amount of weight that people attach to those opinions. And it's the same with a bunch of other people. Al Jorgensen I've spoken about before. Just folks that they hold up as being these visionaries and these intellectuals, and they're fucking anything but. And you just want to shake them awake and go, as much as I hate to use the phrase, but read a fucking book. Anyways, Anthrax's Scott Ian wants to officially expand the Big Four to include Exodus. I don't know how you officially expand something that was truly never really official aside from when they went on tour. But I would say I like Exodus, but all of you guys can fucking get bent, because if you see the t-shirt that I'm wearing, if you're watching this on YouTube, Testament should be the big one, and then they should have another section called The Other Guys, the other four or the other five, and they can stick everybody in there. Testament is a better band than Metallica, is a better band than Slayer, is a better band than Megadeth, Anthrax, Exodus, all of those bands. Yes, you heard me, and it is absolutely true. And part of the reason why it's also true is because name me one record that those bands have put out in the latter stages of their career that come anywhere close to Dark Roots of the Earth or any of the last Testament records. Not even a comparison. Slayer might have Seasons in the Abyss, and they might have Hell Awaits, and they might have Haunting the Chapel. Great records, and records that if you take them on like an album by album basis are better than Testament. But in terms of an overall body of work, since I'd say the mid-90s, Testament has been leading the pack. They brought out Low, and they brought out The Gathering, and they brought out Demonic. Well, everybody was fucking around with the most mediocre horse poo that they could ever put out in their career. So like I said, if we want to do anything official, let's do this. The official Into the Necrosphere big one is Testament, and everybody else are the runners-up. Right, let's move on. Judas Priest's Rob Halford on still performing at age 70. I genuinely, from the heart, do not want it to end. Man, that must be so fucking difficult when you know the end of the road is in sight, and it's something that you love doing so much. You see it with fighters an awful lot as well. Chuck Liddell, as an example, who was, when he was in his prime, was an absolute beast of a man. One of my favorite fighters to this day of all time, just because of the attitude that he had. But, he went and did that Triller Fight Club, lost in really devastating fashion to Tito Ortiz. And it's because the time for him is no longer there. What I will say to Rob Halford is, for the most part, he still sounds pretty goddamn fantastic on stage. For a 70-year-old, I still think that he should, a bit like James Hetfield, and this is just but me being pedantic, but he should maybe just change the pitching of his voice a little bit on some of those songs. We has to go super high because it always sounds a little bit weird. But he can still rip it up way better than fucking most people can. So good for him for still doing this at age 70. I would waver a guess and say that he is going to live far longer than a lot of other folks. And if you want to go by average age, my dad is 70. There's no fucking way he could come and get up on stage and do what Rob Halford does. Anyways, let's move on again. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot else that deserves either scorn or some sort of scientific analysis. This was fucking hysterical. So the headline here, and this will be the article that I finish off with. The headline here: Exodus singer rails against socialist vaccine mandates, defends his support of Donald Trump. Exodus frontman Steve Zetro Souza, who has gone on record as a supporter of former U.S. President Donald Trump, discussed the state of American politics in a new interview with Andrew McKay Smith of Australia's Scars and Guitars podcast. After McKay Smith told Souza that he doesn't think there is any question that Zetro's past support for Trump was well placed given the shit show that America has as a president these days. And by the way, you can kind of sense the hatred coming from whoever wrote this, because they're putting so much of this in quotations, and there's a real kind of smoldering resentment there. But anyway, Souza said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net, they disliked the person, referring to the hatred that Trump elicited from most Democrats and even some Republicans. What other leader in world history, if you tweet, would come right back at you and go, hey, fuck you, because Trump wasn't a politician. He was already a millionaire and a very famous man, more famous than any of the presidents. So what did he have to gain? And then he makes a couple of good points here, in my view. Gas has gone up a full $1 since he's gone out of office, Zetro continued. Wood prices, you used to pay $28 for a sheet of plywood. It's $94 for a sheet of plywood now. So you tell me what's going on. And I feel that nobody's really doing anything right now. I have not seen our government do anything. They're just sitting back like they always do and just cruise. I thought former U.S. President Obama did the same thing. He just got in office and said, I'm president. What are you doing today? I'm just here being the president. If something comes up, I'll get with it. But I don't see him getting out there. Fucking Trump, you heard his goddamn name every day, whether you liked it or not. He was trying to close up the borders and build a wall. People didn't like that. So why this was funny to me, there was so much outrage on Twitter about this, and people, saying, I'll never listen to an Exodus record ever again. I'll never go to an Exodus show, even though it's been pretty well known for a while that the Exodus men are, for the most part, conservative men. But I just thought what was funny about it to me was it highlighted the farce of this unity that people keep screeching about, or they're trying to divide us. They're trying to divide us. That is a accusation often thrown at the right. And I do personally see far more division coming from the left than I do the right. And I think part of that is because I think folks on the right are so used to the fact that most of the bands, most of the artists that they're into, whether it's actors or actresses in movies, comedians, are so far left that you kind of just have to go, well, I disagree with this person, but I'll just go ahead and enjoy it anyway. So they're also not too bothered by the fact that, 50%, if we want to go by voting statistics, 50%, give or take, of fans in the scene are to the left. But then the folks on the left seem to take such immense affront to anyone who disagrees with them by any, in any way, shape, or form, that they immediately excommunicate the person. And I must confess, and again, I think statistically, or my observation, whatever you want to call it, may differ from somebody's own experience, their lived experience, as the liberal folks would like to call it. So I might be, maybe some people have experienced folks who, had family members that said, I'm voting Republican, and if you don't, you can go fuck yourself. You're no longer my child. But I will say, from what I can tell, from what I can observe, there is far more excommunication, division, spite, and just plain old fucking childishness coming from the left than there is from a lot of folks on the right. I mean, I don't, take Trump out of the equation, take, even Republican out of the equation. Most people are pretty centrist. I mean, my views, or most people, I would say, actually, sorry, I'll backtrack. Most people's views are a combination of left and right? So, I would regard myself as pretty conservative fiscally. So when it comes to the size of government, for example, I'm a small government guy. When it comes to taxes, I don't believe in high taxes either for corporations or for people, and that's because I believe in wealth creation, not fucking wealth redistribution. I don't basically like any sort of socialist tendencies, especially on a economic level, inside of a government. I'm not a big fan of welfare being thrown out. I believe that if that people are incentivized by what is if you want to show me the incentive, then I will probably be able to predict the behavior to you. And if you're giving people money to stay home, they're not going to work, they're not going to be economically productive, and that money has to come from somewhere. So economically, I'm pretty conservative. Socially, culturally, I mean, I'm probably fairly to the left. For starters, I'm pro-choice, certainly up to 3 months. And anything where it's a serious issue or of serious detriment to the woman's health after 3 months. Or there's extenuating circumstances like rape and whatnot. Very much on the side of the pro-choice folk. I think when it comes to things like weed, I don't see why the world bothers to continue policing something that doesn't want to be policed. Clearly, I frankly don't even think that the drugs should be policed. At least not in the way that it's done right now. I'm very much a anti-war guy, although I feel like anti-war is in the last couple of years become more of a right position than it is before. But basically, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in freedom of expression. I believe I should be as free as possible, and government should have as little of an influence in my life as as is feasible. And like I said, that kind of puts me, in with one foot in both camps when it comes to different opinions, and I think most people are like that. But I think there's this insane fucking teamsmanship where if you're not on the right team, then all of a sudden you're scum of the earth, and people shouldn't support your music, they shouldn't support your art, they should have you fired from your job, etc., etc. It almost feels in some ways. And as much as I don't want this to ever happen, but it almost feels in some ways like the world is ripe for a dictator, because the human race has become like two fucking bickering kids, and at some point, mom or dad is going to have to come into the room and go, both of you shut the fuck up and go to your room. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about this too much more. I think you all know my thoughts on this, but I will say, like I said, there definitely seems to be a lot more pearl clutching, for the folks on the far left than there are, for the average Republican. I ignore the fucking freaks and the scumbag far right folk, but I think for the average Republican individual, I think they probably think about a lot of stuff the way I've just spoken about right now, and I don't personally think that's any bad thing. I also think this latest hoopla in America about Let's Go Brandon. I mean, Let's Go Brandon is firstly, it's fucking funny, but secondly, it's a meme created by, or as a result of, a news reporter that, I don't know whether she did it deliberately or whether she did it by accident, but misheard a crowd chanting "fuck Joe Biden" and then said on her newscast, I believe they're saying "Let's go Brandon." And now, of course, it's been, called a dog whistle to Nazis. Somebody compared it to ISIS not too long ago. It's a clear sign of white supremacy, but it's absolutely okay for a talentless imbecile like Kathy Griffin to stand there holding a severed Trump head and go, this is my right to free expression. And then everybody that thinks, hey, that's in poor taste, that's apparently them being snowflakes. This is why I say, both sides are acting like fucking spoiled brats who need to be sent to their room. And on that note, folks, I am done with the news for this week. That also brings me to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. For those of you that stuck it out to the very end, thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you to Christian from Necrofier for coming on. And remember, like I said, check out that Doedsvangr record, check out the Ghost Bath record, and check out next week's podcast, because I'll be talking to Dennis of Ghost Bath all about the making of Self-Loather and a bunch of other interesting shit. I mentioned earlier that 2021 is awash with great releases. Another one that I actually haven't spoken about enough on the podcast is the new Goat Torment, which is also available in Season of Mist. They have a new record out called Forked Tongues. I'm going to play out with the title track for this record. And I will wish all of you a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Fascination, raw, violence.